Man, 2020 was something else, wasn't it, Brynn?
Yeah.
I think that displays everything beautifully. Yeah. Well, guys, we're happy to be back for season 2 of Soul Coaching, where we want to focus on the theme of expansion. 2020 was a rough year for a lot of people, and there was a lot going on. There was awakening, there was remembrance, there was healing of trauma. But what happens in the spiritual path when you get past that? Well, it's time for expansion in this phase. And so in season 2, we want to focus on topics that kind of embody or focus on this idea of expanding. We've thrown away some of the detritus, we've gotten rid of some of the garbage, and now it's time to see what we can do with this new creative power.
In season 2 of Soul Coaching, we hope to help you guys expand into the fullest, most authentic versions of yourself, while also giving you practical tools to help you embody all that you have learned thus far.
It's going to be a great season, guys. As usual, I'm your host, Christopher Lee, joined by my wonderful co-host, Brynn McAllister. And in season 2, it's going to be all about expansion. We want to remind you that we are now on Hermit Radio, a subsidiary of LifeGrove, and we are looking forward to an incredible season. Let's get going. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Soul Coaching. We're back. We had a hiatus. Life gets in the way, doesn't it, Brynn? Life gets in the way. And it's time for some spring cleaning, I think, for a lot of us. And so that's going to be what we're talking about today, because it's springtime. We're on the heels of the spring equinox, the vernal equinox. And I got to tell you, I had quite an interesting experience with it, because I started engaging in some new practices and working with angelic energies in general, and it has been massively transformational. And so I've really enjoyed the process, and I feel renewed in quite a bit of ways. And part of that process, the reason I bring it up is simply because I had to clear out a lot of different areas in my life, things that I thought were probably in okay standing, spiritually speaking, but I wasn't under the impression they needed work. And luckily, this new work that I've been doing has brought about some radical transformation and filled me up with a lot more energy. And so with all of that, that kind of like little testimony, and I'll bring up some more of it as well throughout the rest of the podcast. With that energy in mind, that's kind of what our topic is going to be today. Everyone who's attending and listening after our long hiatus. Brynn, how are you today?
It's one of those days, but we're here and we're kicking, and I'm excited that this is our topic today, because I feel like it's something that I need to do, and I think it's something that a lot of people, they hear about, everyone hears about spring cleaning, but I don't think a lot of people know the importance of it and like why it's so important. So I'm excited that this is our topic today.
Yeah, it is such a crucial thing. I've really started to try and tune in a little bit more than I have been in the last couple of years to the seasonal rhythms. And I was talking with a friend recently about that, about how kind of divorced we've become to the natural rhythms. You know, we live in houses. We try not to feel the seasons. We put on coats to not feel the cold. We try to stay inside to avoid allergies, or we put on sunblock to try. We're like constantly putting up barriers to the natural rhythms of the world. And of course, all of those things have their function, but it does over time, I feel like it gives us a sense of atrophy, a sense of disconnection with nature. And so, now that we're in this springtime, I think that a lot of people, especially coming up here with the full moon this weekend, are feeling like this buzzing energy, because everything's kind of like gearing up for a big thrust into regeneration and growth. And I think a lot of people don't know what to do with that energy, or they don't even have the capacity to utilize the energy or harness it in any way. And so today I want to talk about some methods of how we can do some spring cleaning and try to harness some of these energies.
Totally. Well, and I love that you brought that up too. Like the full moon, just in general, brings up, it illuminates all parts of ourselves. So I know for myself, I usually feel very intense around full moons, and usually pretty triggered, because all the things that I would normally like to just like hide about myself is all very apparent. Like, okay, yes, that still needs healed. So full moons are so beautiful because they do show us what still needs healed within ourselves and what is ready to be let go of. Just like the changes in the seasons too. And I love that you brought up too, like how as humans in today's world, we do try to just like numb, or not numb, but like make ourselves more comfortable in every season. And I think there's also beauty in the uncomfortableness that comes with the changes in the season. And that's been something that's been coming up a lot for me lately, just knowing that it's okay to kind of feel into those things that are shifting and those things that are falling away, in order to actually let go of them instead of just trying to like patch them over and move on, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a really powerful time that that we are given access to every year. And so, these cycles of growth, we talk on this show, ad nauseum about how things aren't linear. It's not an A to Z process. It's cyclical. And we go through these phases. Well, we're presented with opportunities with each one of these shifting phases. And spring in general brings this energy of growth, this promise of renewal, of new things and happiness, because we've been through this contemplative, dark period of winter where we're all huddled up inside and feeling warm and getting fat, all those things. At least that's what I did during winter. But since January, I've been working on it so that I can be ready for spring. But yeah, I think it's a great time. And I think that if we're not prepared for it, it can be really unnerving to people because they just don't know what to do with their energy. And one of the best ways is to clear things out. So like if you're like a really witchy type person, if you're like really into that, like sweeping is an awesome, I'm talking about like ritual sweeping and also just sweeping and cleaning, like getting in all the nooks and crannies that haven't been touched in a while. Going through like your storage, your garage. Do I need this anymore? On like a purely physical level, I think it's important to take an inventory of all the stuff you've accumulated because whether you buy into it or not, I think that there is a lot of evidence and a lot of anecdotal evidence as well that kind of points to our energy being tied to our physical possessions, right? So if you're holding on to something physically, it's producing an energetic drain, right? You kind of have to wake up every day and go, this is all my stuff. I have to protect all my stuff. And that takes up all of your energy, right? So it's like one way that you can do this is try to live a little bit more minimally, like on the physical level. But then there's also, there's so much that we can go into like on the mental level, like what thoughts are taking up my energy? Can I do some cleaning when it comes to my thoughts? Can I ditch some of these things that aren't serving me anymore? And again, spiritually too, it's like it's just a great time to take an inventory and make a list. If you just put down the center of a piece of paper a line and said, hey, these are the things that make me feel really good, and these are the things that make me feel anxious or worrisome or frustrated, and then start getting rid of those ones on the right or seeing if you can transmute them into something good.
Well, yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of people, I want to emphasize, because this was really one thing that like was like, oh, that makes so much sense to me when I first like started to realize it. Like I always thought, yeah, spring cleaning, like everyone says we should spring clean, but like why should I? And so if you think about it, I mean, like everything is energy, everything holds a vibration. So your favorite pair of jeans that you wear 3 times a week is going to have a much higher vibration because you're constantly interacting with you're constantly using it. Whereas that pair of jeans that's been tucked in the back of your closet for a year and a half that you've never worn is going to have a denser, lower vibrational energy because you're not interacting with it. And so spring cleaning, to me, when you are actually interacting with the things that are in your life, you're clearing out the stuff that you actually just don't need, and those lower, denser vibrational energies that aren't actually serving you, because you're never going to wear those jeans anyway. If you can get them out, you make more room for more of the things that actually are for you and that will actually be in alignment with you. And so, like, I don't love cleaning, but I love how I feel after I clean. I love how it feels to have a clean space. Everything, when you're like working all day to clean your house and you feel exhausted, but then you sit down once your house is clean and you just feel that like sense of peace that comes from just clearing out the old. And so I think even if we can just be intentional about raising the vibration of everything we're interacting with and making sure that everything that is in our space is in alignment with who and what we want to be, it makes it more intentional and it makes it feel better for us too.
Absolutely. But I do have a question for you. What if they're gold jeans? The jeans that you're like, I'm going to get back into those bad boys. Do you hang on to those?
Are you interacting with them?
Or if you look at maybe, are they just stuffed in the back?
Yeah. I think it depends.
Right. No, and I think that's important. Our attachments to things of the past or ways that we used to be. Hi, buddy. Ways that we used to be can be powerful energetic drains, right? We tend to either potentially romanticize or even hold too much nostalgia for things that are not for us anymore. And so it's important to be really, I kind of want to use the word critical, but I mean like critical, not in so much as like judgment as really being concerted in our effort to sit down and identify the things that aren't working for us anymore. And that can sometimes be really difficult to move on from, right? That could be like a relationship that we don't want to move on from that's producing an energetic drain. Like in particular for me, one that opened up recently was I was involved with a group of magicians in kind of like a secret, order and whatnot. And it was something that I was holding on to, but I wasn't interacting with anymore. It wasn't in alignment with where I was supposed to be going. And it was one of those things where I didn't want to disappoint anybody. And I was thinking about everybody else. And something came up with all this new work that I was doing where the angels basically just came in and said, we're cleaning this out for you. We're getting rid of it. And as soon as I got the message from one of the guys in the group, he was like, hey, so like we kind of feel like we need to move in a different direction and that sort of thing. And I was like, oh, perfect. This is a really bad example because it wasn't me taking responsibility for it. Like, I did, like, in the conversation, I was like, yeah, I agree. I think that's the way it should be. I'm glad this came up. I kind of gave gratitude to the situation. But ideally, what you'd want to do is identify something like that ahead of time and kind of step up to the plate and say, this isn't for me. Because what happened right after that was I felt this immense boost of energy. And a bunch of new things just started to open up for me because I was releasing stuff that was kind of like I don't want to say a ball and chain because it wasn't that, but it was just a place where I was putting my energy that was just kind of hitting a wall and preventing me from taking the next step. And I think that, just that my own personal example is evident in a lot of different things that we do in our life. And I think we all in the back of our minds and in our hearts really, truly know what those things are. We just don't want to let go of them.
Right.
Well, it's like FOMO.
Right. Well, and honestly, like thinking about that too, like how many groups on Facebook am I probably a part of and I have never been to that page? Like, so why am I still like committing to that energetically if like I'm right? And so I think even just being able to kind of analyze it and be intentional about like, okay, maybe this, I mean, even you, just maybe this isn't in alignment, just thinking that automatically steps will start to happen to help clear that energy out, right? So yeah, it's great to be like taking the steps, but I think even just like analyzing it and being intentional about it and thinking about it is the first step in like actually starting to clear that energy that's no longer serving. And I know like for me, my attachments, like physical attachments are like clothes and shoes. And I have like 3 totes in the basement of shoes that I was obsessed with before I had Zeke, but then my feet grew and I just like don't want to get rid of them. But will I ever wear them? No, because they don't fit. So like I need to start to like, right? Like there's so many things or certain shirts that I still love, but I remember when I wore them with that one person and I don't want to remember that person, so I don't wear it anymore, but I hold on to it, right? So like clearing out the stuff that's no longer relevant and is no longer necessary. If you're not going to wear it in the next 2 weeks, you probably don't need it. And so even just taking little steps, taking like, okay, this week I'm going to get rid of 5 pieces of clothing, right? Like it doesn't have to be crazy amounts of things all at once. But just starting to be mindful of it and noticing what's ready to go will help you to start to clear that space for spring.
Right. Yeah, there are so many things to unpack with this, and it for me it really starts with just the attitude and understanding that we are containers and we only have so much room, right? Like we do talk about on this show about how we have this connection to limitless and we have all these potentialities and we can do anything that we want, but over time we have to build this, and we talked about it recently in like daily practice. That's how you kind of build the size of your container so that you can contain more energy and or use more energy. But I mean, most of the time we do this on autopilot. We fill up that container with all the different collections of things that we have, and then we go, why am I so tired? And it's with the law of attraction, even this is one that people kind of don't get. You have to like spend money to get more money coming in. Like you can't just like sit on your bank account, right? And say, I've got all my my gold, my dragon hoard, and I'm just going to sit on it, because then the universe is going to be like, okay, you're good. Nothing more, nothing else. You've got to create vacuums for new things to come into your life. And so when we have this spring energy, kind of this promise of new things coming in, of new growth, we have the responsibility to clear out the things that don't work. And I think it's kind of interesting because traditionally the process would be during the winter is when you're doing this process. So throughout the winter, when you're stuck inside, you're supposed to be identifying the different things that didn't work for you last year and start to move those things out, get rid of them. In the total fashion of the modern world, what we've done is crammed it all into a couple of days right at the beginning of spring to try and get ready in like this hyper drive fashion. And it's a little bit unreasonable. And so I want to, express to everybody, take some time with this process. It's not something that you want to do over a weekend, right? I mean, it can be good and it can feel good, but to be really mindful about it, take a couple of weeks throughout the spring before summer hits to be like, okay, what do I really want to bring in this year? What do I want to add to either my spiritual practice, to my life, to my health in general? Be deliberate about it. And there's an exercise that I came across recently called the soul mirror exercise. And it's pretty simple, but it takes some courage, just because at least I found it took courage to write everything down. And what you do is you basically identify the things that you really like about yourself, and then you identify the things that you really don't like about yourself, like the negative things. And so you have to be able to do this exercise without being like super judgmental to yourself, but you also have to be honest and authentic. And the goal eventually is to try and flip those negative things into some positive things. But I think that inventory process is really powerful. And so I would challenge everybody listening that if you're feeling like you need to make some new room in your life, that's one good process, is kind of just identifying the pieces that you already know. You're just not willing to say them.
Right. Well, and even just taking inventory is so powerful because you become aware of everything that's there, the good and the bad. And from that state of awareness, you can actually start to shift that or change that, or you get to be in control again. So even just the state of awareness. And I always think about too, like, I mean, our exterior experience, our physical reality is just a mirrored reflection of what's happening within, right? And so like how many things throughout your day give you stress or give you anxiety, and you just like oh my gosh, horrible. And you just overlook it. Like, for example, I think everyone's like Tupperware cabinet is probably like a pretty stressful cabinet, right? Because like the lids, like it always gets crazy. But if we can go through and okay, what lids actually, for real though, how does your cabinet look?
Actually, it's pretty good. And I have my wife to thank for that, because I think it stressed her out so much that finally she was like, okay, I'm done with this. We are organizing it and it's going to stay like this or else. And I was like, oh, okay.
Well, bless her, because I do it like every few months.
You are right though.
But yeah, but like the lids, I don't know what happens to them. They just go missing. And then there's like weird sizes with, I don't know what happens in that cabinet, but it like always stresses me out. And so if I just like try to avoid that cabinet, it's still going to be there. And so if we can actually go through and take inventory, okay, which Tupperwares do I have? Which lids do I have? And what actually matches up, and then get rid of the extra clutter, it just leaves us feeling so much more connected with ourselves and where we want to go and what we want to do, because we actually know what we have. We have the inventory figured out, right?
Right. And it seems like silly. Like, how can organizing my Tupperware cabinet help me spiritually? That doesn't make any sense, Brynn, but it really does. Like, even just moving that little amount of energy, like you would think that it's like, well, that's nothing. It's not really impacting my life. But you start moving those little things out, you start to create like a snowball effect, some momentum. And so if you go through this process deliberately in all the different areas of your life, you start to feel so much more energy to tackle the other things, and you don't feel so overwhelmed by that little thing anymore. And then before you know it, things are happening to you at this pace that you're like, wow, how am I keeping up with all of this? And that's been me for like the past like 6-7 days since the equinox. I had this like heavy bout of sort of depressive energy because I was being kind of forced to let go of some things that I had really strong attachments to, but they were like not the good kind of attachments. And so it was really hard to let those go. But as soon as they went and I dissolved those attachments, those energetic bonds, I felt this like propellant happening. And since then I've had this like overwhelming amount of energy. And I think it's critical as well to talk about in the process what to do with that energy, right? So you started spring cleaning and you're doing good, you're cleaning everything out, but there's a point where you get to like an irritable level when you have too much energy, and that usually happens, like you said, like on like the full moon, because things are getting illuminated and you're like, but I'm making all this progress and I'm doing so good, but why am I irritable? And why am I calling my kid's book a stupid book? Like, what is that energy? Like, what do I do with it? And so it's important to have like a relief valve of some kind in your practice, whether that's like affirmations or, journaling, just kind of a place to put that energy, or even a new hobby. Like you're making room, bring in something that supports this new energy and gives you a channel to use it.
Right. Well, and like you were talking about, when things are just sitting, like it still pulls on you energetically. So say today the only thing I have energy for to tackle the dang Tupperware cabinet, then next time I interact with the Tupperware cabinet, I'm not going to have that emotional attachment of, oh my God, this cabinet stresses me out. So walking away from that, I'm going to have the energy to go tackle my medicine cabinet, or go tackle like my office, or go tackle, right? So as we start to actually deal with that stagnant, dense energy, we start to create more room for more positive energy to continue to clear things out. And I think that's something a lot of people do. They like, okay, I'm going to do everything this weekend, which like, great, do you, boo. But like, I feel so drained if I do that. So I recommend taking it little by little. What can I do today that will help me feel more refreshed? What can I do tomorrow to help me feel more refreshed? And like you said, most people should do it like throughout the whole winter, but we try to cram it in this tiny little space. Then we end up coming out of it so exhausted and with so much weird dingy energy that it like almost gets confusing, right? So like, how can we just kind of ground that in and actually allow ourselves to like expand into the energy instead of like being drowned by the energy, right?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying there?
Yeah, I like how you call it dingy energy.
Well, like,
It's like,
you know what I meant.
Well, and I think, it's like we talked about, again, we're kind of bringing up the container again. If you're clearing out and you're making way for new energy, like when you clear out a dense energy, the universe is going to bring you a high vibrational source to replace that. And denser energies tend to like pull our container in, I feel like. So we like condense. And when you take a container that's been condensed for the last 3 or 4 months and you charge it up with all this new high vibration energy, it's like a pressure, it's like a geyser ready to go. Like, and I think that's probably why there were so many like fertility rites back in the day during spring. Like people were like, we're gonna go make some babies now because we got all this like high vibrational energy. And it's I think it's important for us to, like, when we attack this thing, it's not just let's have a garage sale, let's get everything done and then we'll be good. Like, you have to be very deliberate and mindful, and it doesn't have to be elaborate, right? You don't have to have like a system of rituals. I mean, you certainly can. You can be somebody like me who has to do everything that way. But you can be really simple about this, cleaning. I love how Brynn tackles this. Clean out your Tupperware cabinet. Take a break. Go tackle something else. Be mindful about it. Use that energy to give yourself a little bit more joy and time with your kids or with your family or a friend. It doesn't have to be these broad sweeping changes. I mean, we've got a lot of time before summer, guys. I mean, it's the opportunity now is from here until the solstice, when we reach like peak energy levels from the sun. It's really important to be deliberate about how we're growing, because nature always takes the path of least resistance. You watch a tree grow, or you see how nature itself runs its course. We have a very unique ability as humans. We can kind of direct where that goes. But if we don't take the reins, that energy is going to take us for a ride that may not be the most comfortable ride in the world. As we're talking about, this high vibration energy kind of has a mind of its own. And so we have to have practices to harness it in place. And there's many of those, prayer is a great one. Meditation is a great one to like increase the size of your container so that energy doesn't overwhelm you. That's why I think meditating up to the full moon is really important. And then you can kind of take a break after the full moon and kind of integrate pieces as you get closer to the new moon. But small practices like that help you to kind of cope with these natural rhythms that are forces to be reckoned with. And I think it's all about awareness, like Brynn said. I think that's why you see people kind of cuckoo on the full moon. It's because they're not aware of the energies and they're like, why is this happening to me?
Well, and like finding a way to make it actually like sustainable. Like I know for myself, if I say, okay, I'm going to clean once a year in the spring and I'm just going to do it all. But like if I can throughout the whole year, do it every Saturday or every Sunday, or like have it be something like that, I'm not going to feel as like drained from the actual process of cleaning, because I'm actually able to sustain it and check in with it pretty frequently. And I think it's important that you brought up too, like making that time for ourselves too. Like if everything exterior is a reflection of ourselves, as we're going through and cleaning, we also need to be checking in, okay, where is this coming from? Like where was this connected to me, and what do I need to do to fully release that within myself as I'm releasing it in the physical realm as well, right? So it all matches and it all balances out.
Gosh, you're so good at this. You like lay it out so simply and easily for everybody. It's awesome. Oh. I appreciate you.
Words make sense.
Absolutely. As everybody knows, we try to speak as authentically as possible. No scripting here on Soul Coaching, none whatsoever. But yeah, I think, guys, if you're feeling this energy and leading up to the full moon, take some time this weekend to clear out just one thing that you know has kind of been weighing on your mind, weighing on your heart or your soul. Maybe even do a ritual with it. A simple one is to kind of like write down the thing, like figuratively, and like light a candle and maybe even burn the piece of paper you write it down on. That is a really powerful way to reach the subconscious and say, I'm letting this go. I'm letting this go. My attachment to it is done. You can even say the words like that, and then just meditate on bringing in that new energy. Other than that, there's physical things you can do. Maybe even like, I think inputs are a very important thing. Like what energy drains are you intaking in your daily life? Like, is it like a soda or, something that you shouldn't be doing, but it's a guilty pleasure? See if you can drop something like that to bring in something new to help expand your container, so to speak.
Right. Or at least finding balance in it. If I want a second cup of coffee in the afternoon, can I have 2 cups of water before I have that second cup of coffee to find more balance in it, right?
You can't, but there's water in coffee.
No coffee in water?
No, I was just complaining because you triggered me. I'm like, I should drink more water. Dang it.
Oh my God.
Now I'm going to have to go drink water. Ugh.
Right. But I also love that you touched on too, like that aspect of like physically releasing things. And I think so many of us are very empathic. And so when we're going through things, we take it on very physically. And I know like a lot of my clients, they say like, I know I've done a lot of this like work to release this energetically, spiritually, mentally, but like I still feel it. And so it was super beautiful. A couple of weeks ago during a session, it came through that actually releasing it in the physical realm will bring you some of that peace and allow you to actually release that physically as well. And so with the full moon, I think that's a really good time to do that. Like some of the things you've said you're working on forever and you're working on healing, but you still feel them. Write it on a piece of paper, rip it up, flush it down the toilet, burn it, find a way to physically actually release it from your space so that you can have that released from your physical being as well, right?
Yeah, yoga is really good for that as well too. Kind of fixating on that during your practice, allowing your body to move through it, and kind of breathing into wherever it is. Like like you said, you hold that physically and you kind of know where that is, wherever it is that you're holding tension. If you're in a yoga practice, you can breathe into that. Breath work is also another awesome practice to get into, because as you move with the breath, it releases naturally and you don't have to have a lot of that intellectual mental component with the release. It just happens on a physical level. So yeah, I mean, there's so many ways for people to tackle spring cleaning. I think the hardest part is just having the will to do it and say, you know what? The universe is bringing me change, and I'm going to support the universe in this. And that's how we really enter into co-creation, is by taking that responsibility into our own hands, taking accountability for it, and saying, I'm gonna work on this with the universe.